Okay, good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Baruch Hashem, really great to be back. Sorry, my travels and one of my kids got 9 stitches on his face a couple days ago. It's been a busy couple of weeks, but Baruch Hashem back in the saddle and excited to be back and learn with you. What?
Back in Vegas also.
Vegas, Michigan, Indiana, New York. New York? I can't even remember anymore. Yes, New York also. It's been a long week. Been a long 7 days. I did rack up the miles though. Baruch Hashem. So we're starting at a new parak, the parak of Behema Hamakshe. One of the primary themes that we're going to be seeing in this parak is the theme of a ben pakua. We know that a ben pakua is an animal that is shechted while pregnant, and the uber bime imo has no din of shchuta. That animal is what's called a ben pakua, and there is no requirement to do shchita on that animal if after the shchita of the mother, the animal is then extracted live from the uterus, and at a later point, and it's killed benechira. It's not killed by regular shchita. So halacha is, and we'll learn the drasha for this another day. But the halacha is that that's mutter. So we're going to deal with some iterations of that in our Mishnah, and we'll get to the fundamental drashas a little bit later. Says the Gemara, Chullin Daf Samaches, right at the top of the parak. Behema hamak shaleled. If there's an animal that's having difficulty in giving birth, and the tendency was that we would rather shecht it than it die, so we don't lose the value of the animal. But before they shechted the animal, v'hotzi ha'ubar es yado v'hechzira, the animal, the fetus, stuck its arm out of the body and then retracted it. The halacha is mutter be'achila. We need some Rashi here because there's a lot of nuance that we would otherwise miss. Rashi at the top of the page, Behema hamaksha leiled b'shas shchita. It's about to be shechted and it's having a hard time delivering. V'chzira kodem shchita. And the arm of the animal or the leg of the fetus was retracted before shchita, then mutter ba'achila. The problem is, what do you mean mutter ba'achila? What's mutter? The ubar is mutter? Or the limb is mutter? What are we talking about exactly? That we'll see is subject to a machlokas amuroim between Rav and Ula. Rav, we will see right at the open of the Gemara. Ula is on the Amud Beis, and some shaklavataria to try and pressure test exactly what's what, and we'll see that we hold like one of these shitas with clarity. The Mishnah continues, Hotzias Rosho, however, if the fetus, if its head protruded from the body, and then Afal Pisha Shechziro, even if the head recoiled and went back into the mother's body, Hareze Kielod, and then we would not have a din of Ben Pakua. Right? Ben Pakua is a very unique din. It's Mechudash, and we have to make sure that we know where the lines are. If an animal was shechted and the full animal was constantly, fully, the whole time inside, no exceptions to the rule, leisman depalik, that uber is going to be pater from shechita. Everyone agrees. And we're a little bit unclear about what that means when it says motor ba'achila. Is that the leg? Is that not the leg? We'll see. But if the head of the animal leaves during the birthing process, then you're done. Then there's no din of ben paku anymore. There is no heter. If one were to cut a limb of the ubar in pregnancy, so then mutter be'achila, because it never left the body. Seemingly, this also includes even the aver that's cut off. However, minatchol minaklayos aser be'achila. If one were to cut, and here Rashi points this out, it really wouldn't have been clear without Rashi. Rashi says minatchol minaklayos, 7 lines down, shel behema atzma. We're talking about cutting from the spleen or cutting from the kidneys of the mother. If while the mother was alive, there was some kind of procedure that was done to extract a lobe of something along those lines from these body parts, so then the halacha is aser be'achila. Sounds kind of pashut, but it would be aser be'achila, assuming that you later shechted the animal. Obviously, you can't take a kidney out and eat it, right? That's not how Jews work. But you might have thought that perhaps because it wasn't a limb, you cut, and then the mother is then shechted, that you could perhaps even eat this kamashmal, and that's not true. Exactly.
I think it's being left inside the body. So,
My aser be'achila. Ba'afal gav shehinicho bebehema, ha'achina katchol kles mishum demidi delo mitrafahu. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That I hear the correction. Yeah, correct. Yeah, that would be a huge chiddush if you took it out. Ze'aklal, davar shegufa, something that's part of the body itself is aser, v'she'ena gufa, something which is not part of the body, which is a reference to the fetus, which is really not part of the body. Then we would be mutter. Then we would have a din of ben pakua. Amar Yehuda Amar Rab, ve'ever atzmo aser. Let's go back to the first case. We said that if the birthing mother was having trouble during childbirth and the child extended its arm and retracted it, so Rav says, Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rav, that the limb that protruded from the body is going to be usher to eat, meaning that the ubar will be mutter to eat. So let's go back now to those two cryptic words in our Mishnah. When we said that it was that v'hotzi ha'ubar es yada v'chzira mutter be'achila, Rav teaches and says, not the leg. The leg that protruded from the body, let's say 6 inches of the leg protruded from the body, those 6 inches are not kosher. But the remainder of the ubar is kosher. My taima, the Amar Kra, because we have a drasha. And unlike the way we normally read this pasuk, we're going to put the kama or the asnachta in a little bit of a different place. Ubasar basade, meat has to stay within its limits. And if it doesn't, then trefa lo sochelu. The truth is that putting the kama in a different place doesn't greatly change the understanding, but we're playing off of the word sadeh. Sadeh, there's a place, there's a space where the limbs are supposed to be. This fetus is not supposed to extend its arm outside of the body at this point and bring it back in. So this is the drasha, which indicates that the leg or arm that extends outside the body is trefa and therefore lo sochelu. Very important drasha, that once something gets outside of its boundary, we then treat it as aser. And therefore, while the heter of ben pakua applies and the ubar will be mutter to eat, however, when it comes to the limb that was extended out of the body during the Leda, and that limb, even if it was retracted, the halacha is that the leg is usher to eat. 10, 12 lines down, says the Gemara, wait 1 second. Tanan, we have a Mishnah. Our Mishnah says, Behema hamak shalele behotzio bar siyado v'chzira moter be'achila. So it sounds like from our Mishnah, my lav ha'ever. When you say it's mutter be'achila, let's look at the subject of the Mishnah. V'hotzi ha'ubar es yado v'chzira. Al pipashtos, if we were to read this like an English sentence, and he extended its arm outside, you're allowed to eat it. What is the it? We instantly would have assumed that it was talking about the aver, not the ubar. Let's not get confused with these words. Aver limb, ubar fetus. Says the Gemara lo, that's not what it means, even though that is al pipashtos how we would have read it, but that is not in fact how we read it. Rather, it's lo ubar, it's talking about the fetus. Sticking to his guns, Rav still holds this way, that the aver is aser and the ubar is mutter. Says the Gemara, ubar, I don't understand. If what we're talking about in our Mishnah, when it says on the second line, mutter be'achila, that the ubar is mutter to eat, well then I have a huge question for you. My iria hechzira. Who cares if you bring the arm back inside? Bring it inside or don't bring it inside. Once the arm extends outside of the body, every single piece of that arm that extends outside of the body is instantly going to be aser. So my iria hechzira, afilu lo hechzira nami, even if the arm remained extended, the halacha would not be different. Ubar is mutter, and the aver, the limb that protruded from the body, would be aser. Says the Gemara, Hu adin afal gav de lo hechzir. You're 100% right. I'm asking. I agree with you that even if the hand was not retracted back inside, the halacha would be no different. But v'aydi de kaboy misna seifa, because we learned at the end of the Mishnah, quote, Hotzi es rosho afal peshech zero harehu kielod. Since at the end of our Mishnah, when we spoke about a case of a mother that's struggling in childbirth, that if the head exits the body, there we said afal pishech zero. There we needed the chiddush to say that even if it went back inside, the animal is considered to have been a birth. Hareza kilod. So over there we needed to say hotzi es rosho afal pishech zero. Tananami resha ech zero. But you're right. Really, be'etzem there is no difference. We're asering. We're saying that the aver is going to be problematic. So who cares if it's returned? And the Gemara kind of sort of wants to accept that, but we're going to push on that. Says the Gemara, wait 1 second. The Seifa, my kamash malon. What is it that you're trying to teach us in the Seifa? In the case where the head exits the body during childbirth. To kevan de yotza rosho havyala leda is the point of our Mishnah by saying that even if the head goes back inside the body, that's considered a leda? I don't need our Mishnah to teach us that. Tanina, we already know that from elsewhere. A Gemara we'll see in one of our upcoming Masechtas in Bechoros. What does it say over there? And here we're talking about human beings. Eizehu bechor lenachala ve'einu bechor lekohanim. What type of human being gets the bechor status as it relates to their inheritance? However, they're not a bechor lekohanim, namely, they don't have a din of pidyon haben. You poll anyone on the street, a few Jews can answer you. Many Jews, the learned Jews, can tell you a couple of exceptions. My wife is a Levi, so on my child, she's a Bas Levi, done. Kohen, done. I'm not a Kohen, I'm a Yisroel, but my wife's a Bas Levi. What are some of the other exceptions? So says the Gemara, well, here are exceptions of where someone may be a firstborn. That's possible. But they don't have a din of pidyon haben. What are the examples? Haba achar nefalim. Well, if you're the firstborn alive, right? So the haba achar nefalim, someone who's born after a stillborn death, after a woman had a miscarriage, maybe even not even a miscarriage, not even a stillborn, but a miscarriage, which means after even an earlier phase of delivery, gestation. So there, afal pisha yatsa rosho chai, even if the head, when the head left the body, it was chai. Oh, another case is ben tes shiyatsa rosho mace, or another case is where the child had full gestation, but it was a full stillborn. So what's the drasha from this brisa in Bechoros? And we're halfway down on Maseches at Alf Taima de rosho mace. The reason why we said that the full-term child isn't a bechor lekohanim, there's no din of pidyon haben, is because the baby Rahman al-Islam was a stillborn. Harosho chai, then had it been that child was rosho chai, like in the Resha, then haba achara bechor lenachala nami lohava. That had it been that the animal, that the head, that the baby's head exited the body while the animal was still alive, then the animal wouldn't even be a bechor lenachala. The next child wouldn't even be bechor lenachala because the child was a living birth, as it were. Because once the head exits the body, we consider that to be a leda. So what does that mean? That means that from the case in Bechoros, we see that the definition of a birth is with the leda. The definition of a leda is where the head of the baby exits the body. So that can't be what our Mishnah in the Seifa was trying to teach when it said that Hotzias Rosho Afapi Shechzira Hareza Kilod. We already know that from Bechoros. And V'chitem, if you want to say, we really need two sources. We need our Mishnah here at the top of Maseches Aleph, and we need the Brisa and Bechoros, because you might have thought that we need two sources because Ashmuinan be'adam v'kamashmalan be'behema. We heard our Mishnah, that we have a Brisa and Bechoros that teaches us one din, and we have our Mishnah on the top of Maseches Aleph teaches us another. And also, the Adam mi behema lo yalif, I might have thought you cannot learn one from the other. The ein prosdor le behema, there is no prosdor for a behema. So what this means, very interesting, is that they do have a birth canal. This is not what prosdor means. It means that when an animal gives birth, it's fully visible to the world. There's nothing blocking that. But when a human gives birth, the mother's legs are blocking seeing the birth from all other angles. And that is what we are referring to here as a prosdor. And also, that's why we couldn't learn in the direction of an Adam to a Behema, of a Behema to an Adam. And a Behema, from an Adam to a Behema, because the Adam has a Chiddush of a prosdor. Ubehema me Adam lo yalfa, and maybe we can't learn from a case of Behema to an Adam because the Chashiv parts of Panim Didei. If you go to a farm right now and you look at 100 cows, they all look the same. Okay, perhaps there's some minor features. But look across this room, no one would ever mistake any of us. Not one chance. No way. They would never mistake any of us. So because it's Chashiv parts of Panim Didei, so then maybe you cannot learn Behema even from Adam, and that's why we needed two sources. Says the Gemara. Your question?
Well, more question.
Says the Gemara, Hanami Tanina, that we already learned this. Shilya sheyatzas amiktsasa asura be'achila, kesimin vlad be'isha, kach simin vlad be'behema. that whatever the siman of birth is by a human, so too it is by behema. So you're trying to tell me that maybe we need two sources because behema can't be learned from Adam and Adam can't be learned from behema. That's not true. And if you want to say that the Hichziro in the Resha in our first case that we started with was intentional, Tana Seifa Atu Resha, I could understand that would be true. The problem is Eliyamris lo de Resha Dafka velo de Seifa Dafka. It seems to be that there's no point either in the Resha of saying that the arm was retracted or that the head was retracted. Neither of them matter. You wanted to say that the reason why we had to say in the Resha that Hechzira wasn't for the Resha, it was for the Seifa. We wouldn't need it for the Seifa either. The halacha would have been identical one way or the other. So says the Gemara, lo, we actually do need these sources as they are. We need a new source. La'olam ubar. Really, we're trying to focus on the fact that that the ubar is mutter. That's our case of mutter ba'achila on line 2. The leg is not mutter that came out. This is all Rav. Why is it that we talked about the case of Hechzira in our Mishnah? It wasn't because of what you thought, but rather for another reason. The reason why we need, and we're going to see Rav Nachman's Mar Makom, the actual source where Rav Nachman or Yitzchak taught this din, but the reason why we need why we needed the case of Hechzira was because if it wasn't Hechzira, then, and even if the leg were to have been cut off, but the part where the leg would have been visible, that line right outside the body, that also needs to be cut off in order to be kosher. So that's why we had this this case of Hechzira. What was your question, David?
I don't recognize the difference in animals. It could be somebody who knows what they're looking at. Dogs. And
I mean, the vastness doesn't compare to the vastness of humans. No?
yeah, and so what? Like, why is that any raya whatsoever for
Nachanami.
their birth method? That their faces
That's a great question. I didn't look into it, but it's a great question.
right. In other words, for me, you're right. Animals are like a commodity.
And they all, and if I saw two cows next to each other,
I don't think so.
At what?
I'm a city boy.
No.
But they're a commodity. What do you mean their faces look like? Well, they're a bit of a commodity. They're not individual per se.
mm-hmm.
I don't know. But I think that's just the city boy talking.
I'm hearing a different question from you, which is
This
just
question is, what does that have?
what's the relevance? What is the relevance?
Difference in birth.
Why couldn't you learn behemoth from Adam if just because they're
Mammals are mammals.
right? That's because you went to day school. I mean, that's because you took you took science when you were a child. I mean, the fact that they're mammalians.
You'd say different. There is what to compare. There are obviously differences, but
Correct.
there is what to compare. You don't lay eggs. So I don't see why the likeness of their faces would make any difference.
I mean, maybe perhaps it's a reference of an Adam versus a behemoth. Just stam the difference, but then say that.
Right.
Like
We haven't shown. It's not. We want to talk about the difference.
yeah. Very good. I don't know. I mean,
I'm missing something.
yeah. Becomes irrelevant anyways. The distinctions become irrelevant because we do learn from behemoth
Right.
Adam at the end of the day in this regard. Yeah. Because it's an actual birth of a birth canal, not an egg, like you pointed out. I could find more similarities than differences. They nurse, they whatever. Okay, very good. Next question, 6 lines from the bottom. Tashma. Behema hamaksha leiled. And this is a brisa with a lot of cases, and we're going to extract a question on the top of the Amud base. Behema hamaksha leiled. If there's a birthing cow that's having trouble delivering, Hotzi ubar es yado vechzira. If the fetus extends its arm out and then retracts it, v'achar kach shachat es imo, and afterwards the mother is shechted. So this sounds like a case of ben pakua. The only thing that's left to question is the arm itself, the leg itself. Mutter ba'achila. Like our Mishnah, we're not exactly sure what this means yet. Shachat es imo v'achar kach echzira. Let's say that the animal stuck its arm out. However, it left the arm out during shchita, and afterwards it returned. Aser be'achila. That's case 2. Case 3. Hotzias yado v'chatcha. Let's say that the animal extended its arm and the owner cut the arm, ve'achar kach shachat es imo, and only afterwards was there shchita. So the arm is now severed; it's removed of the fetus. Shebachutz tamei va'aser, the limb that was cut off of the living fetus, that has a din of Eiver Minachai, and Eiver Minachai has a din of Nevela. Rashi toward the bottom, Shebachutz is Tameh, the Alfinan Behaor Veharotev, later on in this Masechta, She'Eiver Minachai Mitame Ke Eiver Minachai Min HaNevela. Wow, that's a very interesting halacha. Eiver Minachai has the same status of Tuma as Nevela. So says the Gemara, is that the leg that you cut off from the living fetus, that's Eiver Minachai, and it's going to be Tameh. The Gemara says Tameh va'aser. V'shebifnim, the remainder of the Ubar, which is B'mei Imo, Tahor Mutter. It's an unbelievable distinction of the same animal that you cut from. The majority is completely mutter to eat, and the leg is a complete Isser D'Oraisa. It's not shocking, because Eiver Minachai is obviously an Isser D'Oraisa. It's just unique to hear such extremes within one animal because of Shchita. Next case, last line of Samaches Medal. Shachates imo ve'achar kach chatcha. Let's say that the arm was out, the mother was shechted. Only afterward was the shchita done, was the cutting done on the leg of the ubar that had extended outside the body, turning to the top of Samaches Beis, heading toward the bottom of Samaches Beis. Habasar maganavela divir Reb Meir. The meat, now you've cut it, it makes everything nevela because of tumas maga. Because as we pointed out, you're still cutting off of an animal, and it's considered to be problematic. And Rashi extends this. Habasar kol haubar v'habehema nagu be'ever utmei, and everything is going to be tamei. V'chachamim omrim maga treifa shchuta. So he says there that you're touching a treifa, which was shechted, so it doesn't have a din of nevela. Because really, and this makes sense, the animal inside is a ben pakua. So if you cut the limb after the shechita, which was this case, why is it a nevela? It's not Eiver Minachai. It's shechted, it's nishchat already. But the arm was extended. The arm was out. So that's why they have a discussion, is that if the arm is out and cut, so then according to Rav Meir, that still has a din of nevela, but according to the Chachamim, it has a din of treifa. Katani miha. What did we learn over here? Katani miha reisha. We learned in the early part of this case, hotzi ubar es yado vechzira ve'achar kach shachat es imo motor be'achila. My love ha'ever. This is a very interesting question, because why is it any different than the syntax of our Mishnah? You're bringing me from a new Mishnah, this case at the bottom of Samaches Beis, but honestly, it's not that much different than our Mishnah. We had that hanging, loose definition of it is mutter be'achila. What is the it? You're asking the same question that you asked over there, and if you compare this to our Mishnah says hotzi ha'ubar es yado v'chzira mutter be'achila, and here it says but the addition of shechting the mother at that time, what does that have to do with anything? That doesn't change the vagueness of the line. Why are you asking the same question? And what do you think Rav is going to say? Anything different? So this is the kasha. And Rav says, lo, ubar. Really, this brisa, like our Mishnah, was not talking about the aver that's aser, but rather like the ubar, the fetus, that is motor b'achila, but the leg is aser. Ubar ema seifa. What about the seifa that shachat es imo v'achar kach echziro aser be'achila? That if the mother was shechted and only afterwards the limb was put back in its aser be'achila, ubar amai aser. Why would the ubar be aser in that case? The ubar would never left the mother's uterus. We're good to go. Says the Gemara, Keda Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. This is actually the Mar Makom of Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Actually, the next one is, but we'll see this a third time. So what does it say over here? That this is like Rav Nachman, it's like the lo nitzrucha ela lemakom chatach, hachanami lo nitzrucha ela lemakom chatach. No, the reason why we have this case of achar kach echziro is to say that if the limb was outside of the body, then from the exact place at which the limb left the body, we have to cut off that piece too. Just to make sure that nothing that exited the birth canal will be remaining, because that's usher to eat. Says the Gemara, Eini, is this really true? After all, v'haki asa avimi mi bechozai. When Avimi came from Bechozai, asa v'aisi masnisa biyade. He came with a Mishnah in hand. What Mishnah did he teach? So we were talking about a parsa, talking about split hooves. Let's read the pasuk. Dvarim Yud Daled pasuk vav. V'chol behema mafreses parsa. Any animal that has split hooves. V'shosas shesan chuzitz kad. Shtei prasos malas ger behema usato chelu. So we have parsa and prasos. So let's look back in the Gemara at the Mishnah, at the Brisa that Avimi brought from Bechozai. Parsa is one leg, hichzir. Sorry, I lost my place. Hichzir echol. If the animal stuck its leg out and retracted it, then echol. And prasos, even if it was both legs and hichzir, echol. My love, hichzir prasa, echol prasa. Doesn't this mean that if you extend your leg and then bring the leg back in, that the leg is mutter to eat? Isn't that pshat in this? Says the Gemara, asking on Rav for the third time. Lo, that's not what it means. Hichzer parsa echol ubar. It doesn't mean that if the leg is out and it puts it back in, you're allowed to eat the leg, but rather one is still allowed to eat the fetus. Says the Gemara, same question as before for the third time. Ubar, third of the way down. Ubar ma'ir hichzir. I don't understand. If all that we're saying is that the ubar is mutter to eat, why does the ubar have to be put back? Says the Gemara. The Gemara responds for the third time. Amar of Nachman bar Yitzchak lo nitzrach ela l'makom chatach. Same answer as before. Is that the reason why we keep making this distinction of hichzir versus not hichzir is where we need to cut. If the leg was extended during shechita, we have to cut a little bit more off of the leg to make sure that that part wasn't outside of the body during the shechita. I asks the Gemara, "V'hatrei kra'e kanasivla." We have a double part of the pasuk, parsa and prasos. Why did we need to have parsa and prasos? What's the point of having two things? Just say one. I don't need both. Says the Gemara, "My lavchad le'ever v'chad le'makom chatach." Seems over here that we should have a double heter. One is that the aver should be mutter, and the other is that the makom chatach, or sorry, they should both be usher, that they both need to be cut. Says the Gemara, lo, that's not correct. Chad le makom chatach v'chad le kalut b'mei para. This is a very interesting scenario. I don't know how this exists. I don't know if you can mate a cow with another animal that doesn't have split hooves and it would conceive. I have no idea how this works, but if a female cow is pregnant with a kalut is an animal that's hooves are not split. So how does that work? I just had a shaila this week in the bris milah landscape. I might have shared it already. I can't remember what day it is even. This woman called me. Two women are married to one another. And the non-Jewish partner gave an egg. And they did in vitro fertilization and placed the embryo into the Jewish partner. So the genetic material is Goyish genetic material. The birthing mother, however, is a Yid. So for the last many years, because I researched this shaila before, my impression was, not by my own learning, but by what Rabbanim had told me, is that we always follow the birth canal. If the mother's a Yid, we don't care what's going on with genetic. By the way, even by men, zir masusim, zir masa, we mamish don't, like sperm banks are... it's irrelevant. It's functionally irrelevant as early. So that seeming, I spoke to Rabbi Reese again because I chazer these questions every once in a while. Rabbi Reese said it's a real suffix. Yeah, I didn't know that. I said,
Real
what?
suffix,
I had the same impression.
Yeah.
Because the egg was that non-Jew.
Yeah. So I said, which way do the poskim lean? He said, it's more likely to say we follow the genetic material. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. That was what he told me on the phone. I spoke to him last week. It was shocking. So here, let's talk about this case. We have an animal that's a kalut. We have an animal that has no split hooves, but it's inside an animal that has split hooves. It's kimar shaylam. It's not in vitro.
It would just be a congenital defect.
Could be a congenital defect. Yeah.
I feel like it's a more likely explanation.
I just don't know how mating animals works. We have kiloi behema. The principle exists, but let's say you have a non-kosher animal that I don't know about a pig, but let's say a pig mates with a calf, and the calf conceives. And it has split hooves. And it doesn't have split hooves, the baby. So in utero, it doesn't have split hooves. So that's the case of kalut. Ve'aliba de Reb Shimon, the Amar Reb Shimon, kalut ben para is usher. If you have a baby that's born from a, no, I don't think that case is true.
Animal with the congenital defect.
Yeah, because then
It's not kosher.
It's probably kosher. I would have thought that that's kosher. I wouldn't have said that that's.
I-
So assuming it's kosher, that's not what it's talking about here. Here it's talking about a different species.
That it conceived from the male was a male that had no split. That was what I thought. But an abnormality, I don't know. It doesn't strike me as. I'm not opposed to it. It just doesn't hit me that way. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
It's just not hitting that way at all.
Yeah.
Assuming you really knew.
I know it's a cow. I let's say I'm the one who mated the cows. I know it was, but I did it. I'm the owner.
I think, but like along the similar line, but we were just talking about like the shvatzim and the water. Like I would have thought the Torah is talking about is the type of sheretz it is. Like if it's so not, but then we got into issues where it said like if it grew up in the water, but then it came out of the water.
Yes.
Now it's on the land.
Yes.
It's not that type of thing.
Those are
After that, I would say maybe.
But there was also Yedias.
Because it says.
Yamamun Chalim and all this.
Right,
But there's a problem there too. They're not in the times of the Gemara. Two things. Number one, they didn't have phylus, genome, species. They didn't have that. They didn't have a classification system. We are trained that way. Anyone who's ever learned anything about science and any animals will know that. Whatever. We have groups. We have birds, and we have groups. Everything is. That's A. And B is there was this belief that things just kind of created in water. It was just like when they found maggots on meat, like they assumed that they were chidushim. No, we know that they grew from a spore, from a something, not from a spore, but they grew from an egg, they grew from something. The knowledge is very, very different, but they were certainly not focused on the species because, like you pointed out, if the species left that water and was on terra firma, all of a sudden it became muscle.
On the side of the plate.
Even if it was on the side of the cleat, it became an Isser Doraisa to eat. Sheretz Hamayim. It was a different. What?
Like
It's hard for us because I'm like you. Like, is it a maggot? Maggots are treif.
yeah.
That's what I would have said.
I mean, they may not have had like exactly the same classification system, but the point is, like from the previous Gemara, we see there's an opinion about where the
Yeah.
Like it's not just they had a concept of this is this type of animal. So it's like
They did.
they're saying the pasuk that says, you can't eat this sheretz is not talking about that. So here I would say, like if it said, after learning, I would say that any animal which does not have split hooves, you can't eat it.
Even if it was a bull that was mated with a cow.
Yeah, but they know what a cat
Meaning you're saying it's binary. You're looking at the features of chewing cud and splitting hooves. And if you fail at that, even if it's a genetic disorder, you're a treifa.
Right.
Love it. And I have no idea what the answer is. Also, like they knew from genetic defects. Like I don't know. What do they know? Maybe you're right. Maybe they just. Very good. So Reb Shimon was of the opinion that a kalut ben para was going to be aser, that if a cow delivered a kalut, which again had its hooves closed, it would be aser. But look at this. Hani mili heicha yotza la'avir ha'olam. That's only true if it was brought into the world before the mother was shechted. Aval b'me'e imo shari. If you have the ben pakua of hooves that are closed, completely mutter. It's almost like a trump card that if the mother was shechted, whatever's inside is mutter. Comes out a frog, it's mutter. Comes out
Uber Yerach Emo doesn't matter.
Uber Yerach Emo, correct.
Right, you know what? The liver also doesn't have split hooves or chewing cud, et cetera, et cetera.
I have one. I thought about this earlier today because the Gemara before the two dots on, I don't even know if there were two dots actually, but on the Amud Aleph, we made this distinction. It's the Mishnah. Yeah. The Mishnah said, Zeha klal, davar shegufa aser v'she'ena gufa mutter. And she'ena gufa was talking about an ubar. So that conflicts with ubar yerach imo. But nevertheless, it certainly seems that way from Reb Shimon and the taich of the Gemara that hani mili hecha diyatzel avir olam. But if the mother was shechted aval b'mei imo shari, very, very interesting. We would have been matir that. We would have been matir that because now it's just part of the body.
It makes a lot of sense that if you kind of hoof off of an ubar, that it's ever min achai, because it's not ever min achai from the ubar, it's ever min achai from the mother.
Ask him. I agree.
So
Yeah. Did you?
it's like what part of the mother, but it's that must be the way they're
Right,
saying.
because if the animal doesn't actually eat shvita, because it's an Uber, then how is it Aver Minachai? Unless it's Aver Minachai. I think you're right. Never thought about it.
Hold on 1 second. L'shitaschem, beautiful. Let's say there's a ben pakua, and I want to eat the animal's leg, but I don't want to kill the animal. It's mutter?
Yes.
First, you have to check a box of Tsar Balei Chaim that it's derabanan. Let's assume that that's true for now. So if I cut off the leg of I want a piece of steak. I cut off a rib of a cow, a ben pakua cow. Mutter v'mutter. There's no ever minachai.
It's the blood.
By the way, I'm gonna bring a raya to you. I remember in Smicha we learned this distinction that we know, of course, Ever Minachai is one of the Sheva Mitzvos B'nai Noach. But the matir of Ever Minachai for a goy and for a yid is different. By a goy, the matir is death. Yeah, we learned this. By a goy, the matir is the end of pirchus. By a yid, it's shchita. So you're correct. That means that the isser of Ever Minachai is non-existent in a ben pakua.
Because the mother is dead, so therefore it's
No, because the mother was shechted, not just dead. Yeah.
Right.
So when you do shchita, then the whole world of Ever Minachai just disappears because you were already matir the animal, and uber yerach imo, and it all extends like you're saying.
We also saw the Nisr of Adam. That in the case where it's talking about where we're still being part case. Not to be able to going to eat it or if a Jew can eat it while a goy couldn't eat it.
That was the mi'i kamidi, the akum shari l'Yisrael mutter, the akum shari l'Yisrael asr.
The akum is also right.
Yeah.
That he is a bigger korban than not.
Was that an isser d'oraisa lo sochla adam? Does that apply to a ben pakua? The animal's dead. I mean, it's ki'ilu like the ben pakua is not even alive.
But if it's like other kosher meat, you have to salt other kosher meat, so why wouldn't you have to
Well,
salt?
that's because there's nisr v'chilas dan, but you have to salt it. But
You do have to salt it.
of course, but is the animal halachically alive or dead? Like, I mean, it's a bit of an esoteric, potentially irrelevant question, but certainly Ever Minachai falls away, like you're saying. That's for sure.
Who is alive?
But by the way, if the mother was shechted, yeah, it has to be from the mother. That's a great ha'ar. Okay, all of this, we're now halfway down on Maseches and days, and we're going to learn just another few minutes till about 6 or 7 lines from the bottom of the page. Says the Gemara, Ula disagrees with Rav. Rav was of the opinion that the aver, the limb that extended out of the body, was that which was usr. Let's see what Ula says. Ula Amar, that Rav Yochanan holds, the aver atmo is mutter. When our Mishnah at the top of Maseches Amud Aleph says mutter be'achila, he wasn't talking about the uber pashat that's true. But even the aver that extended out of the body is mutter. That's the shita of Ula. Amar le Rabbi Yehuda leUla. How can you say that, Ula? The Rav Shmuel the Amrei Tarvau Ever Atmo Aser. Rav and Shmuel, they all agree that it's going to be a complete isser to eat the aver. You're not allowed to do that. It says the Gemara. Amar le Ula responds, Man yoivlan me afra de Rav Shmuel umalinan einin. If someone could give me even the dirt that Rav and Shmuel stand on, I would put it all over my eyes. What am I supposed to do? Hachi Amar of Yochanan. Hakol hayu bichlal basar b'sada treifa lo sochelu. I thought that basar b'sada treifa lo sochelu was a very broad isser. However, kshapar l'cha akasav gabechata shiyatzas achutza mechetzasa v'chazra asura. But when we learned that a chatas that was brought out of its boundary and brought back that it's aser, that's where we say basar b'sada treifa lo sochelu. Chatas who depart rachmanaba. Aval kol mili, excuse me. Any other case, we would have said kevan dehadur shari, that once they're brought back in, it's mutter. And therefore, because basar b'sada treifa lo sochelu is only talking about a chata shiyata, therefore, over here, says the Gemara that it's mutter. That's a sheet of Ula. Asks the Gemara, this is not going to last. The Gemara is going to reject this outright. Mesve, ubasar besada treifa lo sochelu. What's with the word treifa? Why did you just say basar besada lo sochelu? Matal monomer. Why does it say the word treifa? Says the Gemara. When it comes to these two groupings of food, I might have thought that with these two foods, that if they were brought back in, they'd be mutter yachal avzekain, maybe by us as well. Talmud treifa, ma talmuda. What is the limud from the word treifa? Amar Rabba kitreifa, ma treifa kevin shenitrifa shuv ein laheter. Just like if there's something that becomes treif, by a definition, if something becomes treif, once it's over the Rubicon, it's done. Av basar kevin shiyatza chutz mechitzaso shuv ein laheter. It should be true here as well. So there should be no heter, like you're saying, that we should assume that the aver is mutter. Tiyuvta de ula tiyuvta. 100% right. We reject this proposition of ula that the aver is mutter, and we paskin like Rav. So let's just summarize. We learned our Mishnah, and then we'll learn 3 more lines and stop. But let's just summarize. In our Mishnah, we had a case of behema hamaksha leiled behotzia ubar esyada v'chzira. We said mutter be'achila. What does mutter mean? According to Rav and Shmuel. Rav and Shmuel were of the opinion that we were discussing a case where the ubar is mutter. That's what mutter ba'achila meant, but the aver is aser. Ula and Rav Yochanan disagreed and said even the aver is mutter, and the Gemara rejected that sheet. Just a few more lines just to learn a quick drasha, and then we'll stop. Amar Mar, 10, 12 lines, 15 lines from the bottom. Lefisha matzina b'maiser sheni uvikurim. Because we found by maiser sheni bikurim, we have that halacha above heichan matzina. Where do we know this? Tichsiv lo suchal le'echol b'sharecha masar degancha b'sharecha hu de lo seichal. Only if it's in a certain scenario is it usher, but if it was outside of its mechitza and brought back in, then that's mutter. And we're going to stop right here and pick up with the Ma'arava Masnu, because they learned Rav in a different way. Rav that we learned that the aver is usher and the uber is mutter. They had a bit of a different phraseology, which we'll pick up on tomorrow night. Wishing you all a beautiful night.